If you met me today, you'd probably think I've got it together. I have a decent job in marketing at a tech company, a little two-bedroom apartment with a view of the mountains, a reliable car, and a pantry that always has coffee, oat milk, and at least 3 flavors of Trader Joe's frozen meals. From the outside, it looks like I'm doing pretty well for a millennial. What you wouldn't see is the part where, for years, every paycheck I earned came with this unspoken question from my family. So, what can you cover this month? Rent, car payments, emergency vet bills that somehow happened every other month, my little brother's DUI, my dad's credit card debt, my mom's just a little help with groceries that turned into half her expenses. If there was a financial fire, I was the fire department. No matter how exhausted I was, how behind I was on my own bills, how much anxiety I had at 2 a.m. scrolling through my banking app in the dark, I kept showing up. Because that's what good daughters do, right? It took one moment, one absolutely gut-punching discovery, for me to finally understand that I wasn't helping my family. I was being used. And the people holding the matches were the same people who used to pack my school lunches and clap at my kindergarten plays. This is the story of how I went from the overworked, over-obligated oldest daughter who paid for everything to the woman who finally said, "No more." If you're a woman who's tired, burned out, and quietly carrying everyone else on your back, this story is for you. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, the kind of place where Walmart was the only mall, and Friday nights meant high school football, whether you liked football or not. My parents had me young. My mom liked to say we grew up together, but that wasn't really true. She stayed the same, and I grew up fast. By the time I was 9, I knew how to microwave dinner for my brother, fold laundry, and write checks for the electric bill while my parents argued in the next room. They weren't monsters. They were just overwhelmed and not very good with money. Payday always seemed to show up with a sigh of relief and disappear with a fight in the kitchen. I still remember the sound of my dad's voice saying, "We'll figure it out, Angie. We always do." And my mom snapping back, "Yeah, when Aaron's old enough to help, maybe." They said it like a joke, but kids hear things, and kids remember. At 15, I got my first job at the local Dairy Queen. I thought I'd finally be able to buy my own clothes without guilt, and maybe save a little for college. Instead, that first paycheck went to help with gas and just this one bill that had somehow slipped through the cracks. My parents would say things like, "You're so mature for your age," and "We're so proud of you. You're not like other kids who just waste money." What they meant was, "You're useful." When it came time for college, there was never a question of whether they'd help. They didn't have savings, no 529 plan, no secret fund from Grandma. There was just me, a FAFSA form, and whatever loans I could get. I went to a state school, worked 2 part-time jobs, and graduated with a degree in marketing and a little over $60,000 in student loans. My parents came to graduation, cried on the bleachers, and told everyone within earshot, "She did it all on her own. We're so proud. She's going to take care of us one day." Everyone laughed. I laughed, too. I didn't understand yet that they weren't kidding. After graduation, I moved to Denver for my first real job at a tech startup. It paid $55,000 a year, which felt like $1 million after surviving on campus wages and tips. I got a tiny one-bedroom apartment with beige carpets and terrible lighting, bought a used Honda Civic, and felt free for exactly 3 weeks. That's how long it took before I got my first, "Hey, honey, can we talk?" call. It was my mom. She started with small talk, asked about the mountains, my job, whether I was eating enough. Then her voice got that familiar wobble. "We're just a little tight this month. The water bill got higher, and your dad's hours got cut back. Could you help out? Just this once?" Just this once turned into a regular thing faster than my paychecks could keep up. It was $100 here, $250 there, just until we get back on our feet. My brother Chris started joining the chorus, too. "Hey, big sis, they're gonna tow my car if I don't pay by Friday. I swear I'll pay you back." He never did. I told myself it was fine. They were my family. I had a salary now. I was single, no kids. I could handle it. So I started picking up the slack at home and at work. At work, I was the yes girl. Need someone to stay late and fix the client deck? Yes. Need someone to take notes in every meeting? Yes. Need someone to organize the holiday party on top of their actual job? Sure, why not? I was determined to prove myself, to my company, to my parents, to this invisible audience in my mind that graded me on whether I was useful enough. My calendar was a disaster. Color-coded blocks from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., then more just a quick thing messages from my manager on Slack at 9 p.m. I lived on cold brew, protein bars, and the anxiety knot sitting in my chest. On Sundays, while other people were brunching or hiking, I was on FaceTime with my mom, walking her through her online bank account and gently telling her that, no, she could not sign up for 3 new store credit cards because they offered her a discount. When the pandemic hit, things got worse. I started working from home, which meant there was no longer a line between my job and my life. No commute to signal done for the day. Just me, a laptop, and Slack notifications that never stopped. My parents' hours were cut again. My brother got laid off from yet another job he hated. Everyone was suddenly in crisis mode. "Aaron, they're threatening to shut off the power." "Baby, your dad's truck needs repairs. He can't get to work." "Hey, big sis, I just need something till unemployment comes through." Every call was urgent. Every ask was framed like life or death. And every time I hesitated, even for a second, I heard, "Wow, you've changed since you moved. Must be nice to forget where you came from." So I sent money. I cut back on my own groceries. I delayed my student loan payments when I could. I canceled therapy because it was too expensive. And anyway, other people needed things more than I needed someone to talk to. If I ever brought up feeling tired, my mom would say, "Oh, you think you're tired? You should have seen us when you were little." So I stopped mentioning it. The weird thing about being used is that it doesn't usually feel like abuse all at once. It feels like 1,000 tiny, of course, moments that slowly erase you. My breaking point didn't come in some big Hollywood-style fight. It came on a Wednesday afternoon in April, sitting in my apartment in leggings and an oversized hoodie, halfway through a Zoom meeting where my manager said the words, "We're going to need you to pick up some extra accounts. You're just so good at handling chaos." I smiled on camera, muted, and said, "Sure, no problem." Then I opened my banking app on my second monitor and felt my stomach drop through the floor. My checking account, which should have had enough to cover rent and a few bills, was down to $126. I frowned, refreshed the page, and started scrolling through the recent transactions. There were several small charges I recognized, groceries, gas, my Spotify subscription. But then there were bigger ones with a name that made 0 cents. Midwest Furniture Outlet, $2,487.63. Best Buy, $1,104.29. J&L Tires, $842.10. All of them were from my hometown. I hadn't been there in over a year. My heart started pounding so loud I barely heard my manager asking me a question on Zoom. I mumbled something about my internet glitching, ended the call, and grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I called my bank. After 20 minutes of being on hold and listening to an upbeat recorded voice tell me how important my call was, a woman finally answered. Her name was Donna. She sounded tired, but kind. I explained the charges. I told her I hadn't been in Kansas. I told her that no one else had access to my account. She paused and then said, carefully, "Ms. Walker, these charges are actually on a credit card ending in 0924 that's attached to your profile. Did you recently open a new account?" I felt like the room tilted. "No," I said slowly. "I haven't opened any new cards in years." Donna cleared her throat. "Well, according to our records, an application was submitted 3 months ago. It has your name, your social security number, and a co-applicant listed." My chest tightened. "A co-applicant?" "Yes," she said. "A Angela Walker." My mother. I stared at the wall, numb. I hadn't given my mom my social security number in years. I didn't need to. She had it memorized. "Ms. Walker?" Donna prompted. "Are you still there?" "Yes," I whispered. I didn't authorize that." She explained the process to dispute it, the forms I'd need to fill out, the fraud department, the potential investigation. Her voice was gentle, but my ears were ringing. After we hung up, I pulled up my email and typed my social security number into the search bar. A dozen old emails popped up: tax documents, student loans, W-2s, and one more thing I didn't expect. An email from my mom from 2 years ago, with my tax return PDF attached and the subject line, "Save this for you so you don't lose it." My social security number, my signature, everything she'd need to pretend to be me. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, baby girl," she chirped. "How's my big city girl doing?" I didn't bother with small talk. "Did you open a credit card in my name?" Silence. Then a defensive laugh. "Oh, for God's sake, is that what this is about? Erin, calm down. It's not a big deal. We were going to tell you." My vision blurred. "You stole my identity." "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "We're family. It's not like we're strangers. We needed a few things, and your credit is better. Your father's truck needed tires, your brother needed a bed, the old couch was falling apart. We were going to make the payments. It's not like you're poor." My voice shook. "I barely can pay my own bills. And you, why wouldn't you just ask me?" She scoffed. "Because you always act so put upon when we need help. Oh, I have my own bills. I'm so stressed. I'm so tired." You chose to move away. You chose that expensive city. You can afford it. You're single. You don't have kids. You'll be fine. Something inside me cracked. "Mom, my rent is due next week. I don't have enough to cover it because of these charges." "You'll figure it out," she said, just like my dad used to. "You always do. You're the strong one." "I didn't give you permission," I whispered. Her voice went cold. "You're really going to make this about permission? After everything we did for you? food on the table, roof over your head. We didn't charge you for rent when you were in college and came home, did we? You know how disrespectful you sound right now?" And there it was, the script I'd heard my whole life. We do the bare minimum expected of parents. Therefore, you owe us forever. Something in me shifted. It was like watching the stage lights turn on and finally seeing all the wires and props behind the performance. This wasn't love. This was control wrapped in guilt. "Mom," I said, my voice steadier now, "I'm going to dispute the card. This is fraud." She gasped like I'd slapped her. "You would do that to your own mother?" "You did this to me." She started crying, loud, performative sobs. "I knew it," she wailed. "Success changed you. You think you're better than us. Go ahead. Turn your back on your family. Don't come crying to us when you end up alone." We hung up with her, still sobbing into the phone. I stared at the black screen and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not guilt. Rage. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my couch with the TV on low, staring at the ceiling while my thoughts spun in circles. I kept replaying everything. The just this once calls. The times I'd skipped buying myself a winter coat so I could send money for their utilities. The way my mom called me ungrateful for hesitating before wiring $500 for groceries. And now, this card. Opened in my name, without my permission, used like I was an ATM that couldn't say no. At 3:17 a.m., I sat up and said out loud into the empty room, "This is abuse." It felt harsh. It also felt true. I grabbed my laptop and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, "What they've taken from me." I started making a list. Money amounts. Times I said yes even when I couldn't afford it. Times I worked unpaid overtime to cover expenses that weren't mine. Times I canceled plans, vacations, therapy, rest, because someone in my family needed the money. I added another section. What it cost me. Sleep, my mental health, my savings, my sense of safety, the belief that I deserved help as much as anyone else. By the time I finished, it was almost sunrise. My list was 3 pages long. I looked at it and knew, if I didn't change something now, nothing was ever going to change. My family wasn't suddenly going to wake up one day and say, "Wow, Erin, you've done enough. We'll handle our own lives now." They had no incentive to stop as long as I kept paying. I realized something that hurt like hell. They didn't respect me. They relied on me. Those are not the same thing. So I made a decision. I was done. Done being the emergency fund. Done being the default solution. Done letting people commit financial crimes and calling it family. I didn't know yet what done would look like practically, but I wrote one more line at the bottom of the document. I am allowed to protect myself from my own family. And for the first time, I believed it. The next few weeks were not glamorous. There was no montage with upbeat music and shots of me confidently signing legal documents. There was me, in sweatpants, ugly crying between calls to the bank, my HR portal, and eventually a therapist I found through my company's employee assistance program. First, I called the bank back and officially filed a fraud claim. It felt wrong, even as I did it. I kept wanting to apologize, to explain that it wasn't a stranger, it was just my mom, to soften the language. But the woman on the phone said gently, "If you didn't authorize it, it's fraud. It doesn't matter who did it." Hearing it that plain made me want to both throw up and hug her. Next, I checked my credit report. There were 3 accounts I didn't recognize, 2 store cards, another credit card, all opened in the last year, all with my name and my social. I spent hours on hold, filling out forms, sending copies of my ID. I froze my credit. I put alerts on all my accounts. I changed passwords, turned on 2-factor authentication, and removed my parents and brother as trusted contacts on everything. I called my therapist, her name was Jenna, and said, "I feel like a horrible daughter." She listened, then asked, "What would you call it if a romantic partner did everything your parents just did?" I didn't hesitate. "Financial abuse." She nodded. "So why is it different when it's your parents?" "Because they changed my diapers. Because they're family. Because holidays. Because guilt. Because the entire culture tells daughters we're supposed to hold everything and everyone together without complaint." "That belief is what's keeping you stuck," Jenna said. "Not their need. Their need is real, but their behavior is a choice." We worked on scripts. How to say no without explaining my entire budget. How to end a call when the guilt tripping started. How to remind myself that boundaries are not cruelty. Meanwhile, my mom was lighting up my phone. At first, she sent long paragraphs. "I can't believe you're doing this to us. Your father is so stressed. We raised you better than this. It's just money. Family is more important than money. You're going to ruin your brother's life if you don't help him." When I didn't respond, she switched tactics. Short, sharp messages. "Wow. Ungrateful. Don't ask us for anything when you're old and alone." Then came the calls from my dad. "Hey, kiddo," he'd start, sounding tired. "Can you talk to your mom? She's a mess. You know how she is. Maybe you can just work something out. Nobody meant any harm." I'd swallow the urge to cave and say the line Jenna drilled into me. "I'm not discussing money with you right now. I've taken steps to protect my accounts. I hope you can respect that." He'd sigh. "You've changed," he'd say. "I've grown," I'd answer, and then I'd hang up before the argument could loop. My brother tried a different angle. He sent me a meme about boss babes and wrote, "Look at you, setting boundaries. So proud. By the way, can you Cash App me $200? I'll pay you back Friday." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I texted back, "No, I'm not sending you any more money. I hope you figure things out, but I can't be your solution anymore." His replacing came fast. "Wow, okay. Guess we know where we stand. Must be nice up there on your high horse." I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Every time I enforced a boundary, I felt sick to my stomach. Every time, a voice in my head said, "You're selfish. You're abandoning them. You're overreacting. You're the problem." But another voice, the quieter, newer one, would answer, "They made choices. You're allowed to make choices too." On Jenna's suggestion, I also talked to a lawyer. I thought I'd feel dramatic walking into a law office. I thought he'd laugh and tell me I was being too harsh on my poor, struggling parents. He didn't. He listened carefully, looked through my paperwork, and said, "What your mother did could absolutely be prosecuted. Whether you want to go that route is up to you. But you should at least document everything and protect yourself going forward." He helped me draft a letter. It wasn't a warm, fuzzy letter. It wasn't about feelings. It was about facts. I sent it to my parents via certified mail. It said, in part, "Any further attempt to open accounts, incur debt, or access funds in my name without my explicit written consent will result in legal action." It felt brutal, but it also felt like locking my front door after someone had broken in. Not petty, just necessary. I decided not to press charges. Maybe one day, if they kept crossing lines, I'd reconsider. But in that moment, I didn't want court dates and police reports. I wanted space. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went low contact. I muted the family group chat. I stopped answering calls after 9 p.m. I didn't drive down for Memorial Day or the 4th of July. When my mom texted, "We miss you," I replied, "I need time." The first holiday season was the worst. I spent Thanksgiving with a coworker and her wife, sitting at their table, laughing with strangers who felt kinder than my own blood. At one point, her wife put a slice of pumpkin pie in front of me and said, "You look like you need extra whipped cream." I burst into tears. Because for the first time in a long time, someone was giving me something without asking for anything in return. If this were a movie, this is probably the part where my family learns their lesson, apologizes in a big emotional scene, and we hug it out over mashed potatoes. That didn't happen. Here's what did. Without my extra money flowing into their lives, my parents had to face their reality. The shiny new furniture from the outlet? Those payments didn't magically pay themselves. The truck tires? Still needed to be paid off. The store cards they'd opened in my name got closed when the fraud investigation progressed. They received notices. They were not happy. My mom called me one afternoon, furious. "You made this so complicated," she yelled. "If you had just helped, none of this would have happened. They're talking about collections now. They're ruining our credit." I let her finish her rant. Then I said, calmly, "I didn't make this complicated. Using my identity without consent did. I am not responsible for that debt." She screamed, then hung up. A month later, my brother texted. He'd been evicted from his apartment. "Landlord's an asshole," he wrote. "I thought you'd at least offer to let me stay with you for a bit." I looked around my tiny Denver apartment. I pictured him on my couch, eating my groceries, playing video games all day while I worked 10-hour days and tiptoed around his temper. The old me would have said, "Just for a few weeks, until you get back on your feet." The new me typed, "I'm sorry you're going through this. I can't offer housing. I hope you find a solution." He replied with a wall of insults. I blocked his number for 3 months. Was it karma? I don't know. I don't think the universe punishes people neatly based on what they've done. I think cause and effect just finally caught up with them. Without their financial safety net, me, they had to feel the impact of their own choices. Meanwhile, something else was happening in my life. Without constant requests, my money started staying mine. The first month, I didn't send anything back home. I felt guilty every time I opened my banking app and saw the extra few $100s. By month 3, I was able to put money into an emergency fund for the first time in my life. By month 6, my credit score had recovered from the fraudulent accounts. The bank removed the charges after the investigation sided with me. The relief I felt seeing those balances go to zero is something I still struggle to describe. I also had more time. Without constant financial fires to put out, my brain had room for other things. I started going on walks after work instead of collapsing on the couch, phone in hand, waiting for the next "we have a problem" call. I signed up for a Saturday pottery class. I was terrible at it, but for 2 hours a week I was Erin who likes clay, not Aaron who pays everyone's bills. I made new friends, not trauma-bonding coworkers who only wanted to talk about deadlines, but women my age who also were learning how to set boundaries with families, bosses, partners. One night, sitting on a rooftop patio with them, sipping cheap rosé out of plastic cups, one of them said, "I told my mom I'm not coming home for Christmas this year." She went ballistic. But I'm kind of proud of myself. We all laughed, clinked our cups, and I realized I wasn't uniquely broken or selfish. I was just one of many daughters who'd been taught that love meant self-erasure, and I was finally choosing a different definition. There was one more piece of karma that surprised me. About a year after everything blew up, my mom called. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Your father's in the hospital," she said. "He had a mild heart attack. He's okay, but they say stress and diet played a role." I took a breath. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "Is he stable?" She said he was. She gave me details. For once, she didn't immediately pivot into a request for money. There was a long silence. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "I didn't realize how much we leaned on you until you stopped. I'm not saying I understand everything you did, but things have been hard." I stared out my window, watching the sunset stain the sky orange. "Things were hard for me too," I said. "For a long time." She didn't argue. We didn't magically fix everything in that call, but for the first time, I heard something that sounded like, not quite accountability, but maybe the beginning of awareness. And that was enough for that day. Now, it's been almost 2 years since I filed that fraud claim and started pulling my life back into my own hands. I'm still in Denver, still at the same company, though I finally had a conversation with my manager about realistic workload and boundaries. I blocked Slack notifications after 6 p.m. I actually use my PTO now instead of hoarding it just in case. My relationship with my family is different. I talk to my dad occasionally about football or the weather. We keep it surface level. My brother and I are mostly estranged. He pops up every few months with a new number, a new crisis, a new apology that almost always ends with a request. Sometimes I answer, sometimes I don't. My mom and I are in this uneasy middle ground. We talk, but I don't tell her everything anymore. I don't share my salary, my savings, or my plans in detail. I keep my financial life private, not because I'm hiding, but because I'm allowed to have parts of my life that aren't accessible to everyone, even her. The biggest difference isn't how they act. It's how I see myself. I no longer see my worth in terms of how much I can give, fix, or pay for. I don't measure my goodness by how little I keep for myself. I've learned to ask, before I say yes to anything, is this coming from love or from fear and guilt? If it's fear and guilt, the answer needs to be no. Not because I'm unkind, because I'm finally being kind to myself, too. If you're listening to this and you're that woman, the one everyone assumes will pick up the tab, take the extra shift, babysit, loan money, help out just this once, I want to say this directly to you. You are not a bad daughter, sister, partner, or friend for needing boundaries. You are not selfish for wanting your paycheck to go to your own bills, your own therapy, your own future. You are not forgetting where you came from because you refuse to let people use your love as a weapon against you. Family can be a source of comfort, but family is not a free pass for disrespect, manipulation, or theft. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is lock the door that everyone has been walking through whenever they feel like it and say, I love you, but I will not sacrifice myself for you anymore. If no one has ever told you this, let me be the first. You deserve rest. You deserve safety. You deserve to have your money, your time, and your heart treated with care. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to change the rules. You are allowed to protect your peace, even from the people who raised you. My name is Erin Walker. I'm 34. I still get scared every time I set a new boundary, and I'm still learning. But I am no longer my family's emergency fund. I'm my own, and that has made all the difference.